Today on Newsgirls. Inside the high-stakes Iran nuclear talks, Iran's stockpile of uranium has enriched to 60%, step away from weapons-grade levels. Thrilled to talk to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear under the Obama administration.
On the Iranian side, a very skilled, capable diplomat. The U.S. side, a crony of President Trump's.
Pepsi vs. Poppi. Big Soda attempted to secretly buy off conservative influencers, and doctors have reported literally telling their patients to stop drinking it. And Spotify kills music festivals. This past weekend, Coachella kicked off. This year's ticket sales were sluggish. And then there's a huge shift in the culture in the past few years that have made music festivals less popular. Welcome to Newsgirls. I'm Wren. And I'm Mabel. Let's get into the stories. Last Saturday, the US and Iran held tense, highly anticipated negotiations in Oman over Iran's rapidly accelerating nuclear program. And this was actually the first time that the two countries met and discussed this since Trump pulled the US out of the Obama-era nuclear deal in 2018. And from reporting, we've learned that both parties sat in separate rooms and communicated through an Omani mediator. But at the end, U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi walked out together, so they briefly spoke face-to-face. And the stakes for this meeting could not be higher because Iran was actually hit with Trump's tariffs last week, and its economy has crumbled since Trump pulled us out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in his first term. And that meant that the funds that had been opened to Iran through the JCPOA were refrozen, and their ability to sell crude oil was limited. As for why these talks are so critical for the US, Iran's stockpile of uranium has enriched to 60%, which is allegedly a short technical step away from weapons-grade levels, and it's just way more uranium than what Iran claims is for civilian purposes like energy and medicine. No, it's definitely sus because they're the only non-nuclear weapon state enriching uranium to this level, and they have enough uranium to make 6 bombs. Oh, great. And the reason the JCPOA was so important is because it limited how much uranium Iran could stockpile from like 60% and everything it has now to 3.67%. So even if Iran violated the deal and ended up making a nuclear weapon, it would take it a full year. The deal was initially signed by the UN Security Council, the EU, and the US in 2015. But then Trump came into office and he called it the worst deal ever and said he'll get a better one that will stop Iran's missile development. But then he couldn't. So now Iran's steadily accelerating uranium enrichment, and some experts say they could build a nuke, quote, soon. And now tensions are at a boiling point since Trump has threatened to unleash airstrikes on Iran's nuclear program if a deal isn't reached. And there's a looming deadline since part of the JCPOA, where the UN could impose sanctions on Iran, is set to expire on October 18th. So that could be one of the reasons that Trump is so set on having these talks. But the JCPOA took 2 years to negotiate, so experts say it's likely Iran will drag the process out several years, which would give them more security and allow the deal to grow roots before someone else could come into office and undo it, like what happened last time. And this is interesting. Iran's currency has gained 16% just since the US talks were announced. And these talks are more critical than ever because there's this fear that Iran could fund terrorist organizations in the region, which is of course a huge threat to Israel, a US ally. And these fears aren't baseless because Iran has said that it wants to outright destroy Israel. So Netanyahu is pushing to dismantle Iran's entire nuclear program. Quote, "We go in, blow up the facilities, and dismantle all the equipment under American supervision and execution." Well, Iran has also been providing Russia ballistic missiles for the war in Ukraine. They're close allies. And actually, before the talks continue, Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi is visiting Russia to consult them on this deal. So we're in the midst of these really fragile, pivotal negotiations right now. The next round is actually this Saturday, where Omani officials will actually continue to mediate. So to get an insider perspective, we are thrilled to talk to Andrew Weber, who served as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense Programs under the Obama administration. Can you set the scene for these talks last Saturday? Like, what atmosphere was the U.S. kind of walking into to negotiate the terms of Iran's nuclear program?
Well, it was reportedly cordial. The talks were, of course, approved by President Trump and the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, in advance, arranged through an exchange of letters between the two of them. And it was, on the Iranian side, it was led by the foreign minister, who's a very skilled, capable diplomat. And on the U.S. side, it was a crony of President Trump's, Steve Witkoff, who is his special envoy for Middle East affairs.
For those who aren't following the negotiations that closely, what bargaining chips do both sides have right now? What demands do you expect they're both going to make in these negotiations?
Well, the situation has gotten much, much more dire since President Trump pulled out of the agreement in 2018. So that was, nearly 7 years ago. Iran at the time only had low enriched uranium, which can't be used in a weapon. Since then, they've restricted the monitoring, and they've produced about 120 to 130 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, which is not yet weapons grade, but it brings them much, much closer. On the other hand, Iran is in a position where it's very weak. It's suffered all but obliterated by the Israeli military after the Hamas attacks. Hamas has been pretty much destroyed, its leadership eliminated. Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy in Lebanon, its leadership has been destroyed and militarily weakened. And then, of course, Syria, the fall of the Assad regime, which was Iran's, best neighbor, changes the situation very much. In addition, the economic sanctions over time have really, really hurt the Iranian economy, and they're suffering a lot. They're having power outages, shortage of gasoline. So they are very eager to have the sanctions lifted.
And why do you think Iran was finally open to having these talks after the US pulled out in 2018? We understand that the relations have been pretty tense. What is different about the situation now?
For one, Iran is weaker militarily than it was a year ago. They had launched several attacks against Israel, and most of those missiles, cruise missiles, and drones were intercepted by an international force and never reached their targets in Israel. And of course, last year, Israel responded by taking out Iranian air defenses. So they're very vulnerable now. They had a sophisticated air defense system supplied by Russia, which has been completely destroyed. So they're very concerned that an emboldened Israeli leader, Netanyahu, who seems to get a green light for everything from President Trump these days, might attack their leadership targets and the Iranian nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo.
And we do understand also that a big part of the reason that these talks are so important now is because the UN's ability to impose sanctions on Iran is set to expire October 18th, which is obviously coming up. So what does that mean for Iran? What can we expect to see in the following months?
Well, that creates some real time pressure. The so-called snapback provision of the sanctions will expire this October. So, of course, Iran doesn't want that to happen. It's part of the reason they've entered into these negotiations, to show some good behavior. And also the political situation in Iran has changed. The former president died in a helicopter crash. He was fairly hardline. The new president is considered a pragmatist, and indeed he was able to convince the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who makes all these decisions related to the nuclear program of Iran, that it was a good opportunity to negotiate at this time. And we know, were a nuclear advisor under the Obama administration, which was the last time we had a nuclear deal with Iran. Just to remind everyone listening, how big of a feat was that? What can that tell us looking forward? Trump says he's going to make this deal, but is it really going to be as easy as he's making it seem? Oh, the original Iran nuclear agreement prevented Iran from having a nuclear weapon, period. It was a huge achievement. It was narrow and it's focused just on preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And of course, President Trump pulled out of it in 2018, claiming that he was going to get a better deal, and he never did. And that's why the situation has gotten a lot worse in the intervening years. You mentioned Steve Witkoff is, of course, the U.S. representative who went to negotiate the deal on Saturday. To our knowledge, he doesn't really have the experience to facilitate the technical details of this nuclear program. Do you think he was the right person to head this? What can we expect with that? Well, he's a total amateur at international diplomacy and doesn't have the technical expertise. My hope is that our experts from the State and Defense departments will support him in these negotiations. It's not clear to me I was unable to determine exactly who accompanied him to the meetings last weekend in Muscat, Oman, but presumably he's not totally on his own, and he has professionals supporting him. He does have one real benefit as a negotiator, and that is he has the president's ear, and the Iranians know that.
And so we've been seeing reports, switching the subject a little bit to Israel, that Israel's preparing long-range missiles to launch attacks on Iran. Do you think they would do that while these negotiations are ongoing?
No, I definitely don't think that. Israel would much prefer that military strikes against the Iranian nuclear facilities be conducted together with the United States. And indeed, I think that's probably what would happen should these negotiations fail. Israel does have some unilateral capabilities, but for example, the United States has recently deployed some B-2 stealth bombers, strategic bombers, to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which is in range of Iran. So I think because of the nature of the targets, they're deeply buried underground targets. The United States has much greater capabilities to destroy them than the Israeli military.
Does that give Iran incentive to drag the talks out then because they feel more secure?
I don't think Iran, if they're being wise, will drag out these talks. I think they should reach some kind of an agreement quickly that can diffuse the situation and allow Trump to rein in any potential Israeli unilateral military action.
So, what do you expect from these peace talks? Like, do you have faith that we will get to a deal soon? Like, we were kind of thinking back to Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office and how like heated discussions can be. Like, this is such a fragile situation. What do you think will come of it?
Well, we have professionals on both sides. The fact that these talks were approved at the highest levels of both governments, and they got off to a good start. They're meeting again this weekend, which, by the way, is the Iranian Supreme Leader's birthday. He's going to turn 86 years old. And
Oh my God.
yeah, so the fact that they're meeting again so quickly tells me that they probably won't have protracted, drawn out talks, that they can agree on the framework going forward.
Big Soda attempted to secretly buy off conservative influencers to fight against RFK's war on soda, causing a lot of turbulence in MAGA world. So in case you missed it, last month RFK announced that the Trump administration will allow states to ban people on food stamps or SNAP recipients from using that money to buy soda. And as you can imagine, there are mixed responses to this ban. So there's one side that says it infringes on freedom of choice and when have nutritional bans actually produced real results. But then there's another side that's saying that pushes like this could save taxpayer money on programs like Medicaid. But TBD whether RFK actually has the legal ability to do this, since SNAP actually falls under the Department of Agriculture and isn't under his purview. And soda is definitely bad for you, and like we know sugar has proven health risks, but I don't know if I like that the government can tell poor people how to spend their money. But to dive into the weirder details of this story, days after RFK's announcement, a slew of conservative social media personalities went after him. So accounts like Clown World with 3 million followers posted, "This is government overreach. Remember when New York tried this and it backfired, and a new war on soda has begun." And then more conservative commentators chimed in. They were calling out the hypocrisy and posting photos of Trump's Diet Coke button, which we've reported on, and Trump drinking Coke at the golf course. And weirdly, they all had the exact same wording and posted the same photos of Trump. And then journalist Nick Sorter exposed everyone on X, claiming that marketing agency Influenceable was secretly cutting huge checks to MAGA influencers on behalf of Big Soda to whip up outrage on social media. We even have the template that was like sent to all of these influencers. It has talking points and images of Trump that they can use. And then Turning Point USA contributor Riley Gaines corroborated the claims, to which RFK responded saying, "Thank you for your integrity, Riley. It's troubling that some companies now think they have a right to demand taxpayer money to poison our children." And then a lot of the mega creators deleted their posts and apologized for misleading their audience. That was not a discreet campaign at all, like so embarrassing. And this is just one example of how clear it is that the beverage industry is in flux and Big Soda is losing when it comes to branding itself as like cool and healthy and reputable, especially when all of these new drinks are kind of popping up every other day and are so successful. Well, the undisputed king of Capitol Hill is Celsius. The Washington Post wrote an article titled "The U.S. Government Runs on Celsius," and the findings were shocking. Right, like in the basement of the Capitol, there's a Celsius-only vending machine that kind of just feeds the addiction of Hill staffers and representatives. And the person who refills the machines daily was interviewed and said, "I just filled it, but by the end of the day, I bet all the Celsius will be gone." Well, I guess it especially empties out before big legislative pushes, according to a Wyoming senator who's called the Congressional Celsius Influencer. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, doesn't want to take any risks of not getting a can, so he keeps an ever-replenished stash in his office, and there's even video of him drinking it while swearing in new members in January. So it makes sense that last year they raked in $1.3 billion in revenue, and as we all know, Celsius is an energy drink primarily for fitness, but has become like a coffee substitute for so many people. It has 21 flavors like Fuji apple pear, kiwi guava, and my personal favorite, strawberry passion fruit. And where Celsius really gets its edge is marketing itself as healthy. Like it claims it can boost your metabolism and burn fat, kind of like a goopified Red Bull.
Essential vitamins and proven ingredients. Celsius. Live fit.
And even though the studies that allow them to make those claims are pretty flimsy because they're brand funded, this healthy reputation has really opened the door for women to embrace it, which is a big departure since usually energy drinks are very like macho masculine. My doctors say, sorry to all the politicians, that despite this healthy branding, Celsius is just like any other energy drink.
I'm gonna get so much heat for this, but let me tell you why Celsius drinks are not good for you. There's no proven benefit. There's no proven health benefits to these drinks.
I drank one 5 hours ago and I still feel like I'm about to have a panic attack.
So what she's feeling is coming from the caffeine levels. A can of Celsius has about 200 milligrams of caffeine. Compared to other beverages, a can of Coke has about 35 milligrams of caffeine. A Monster drink, 150 milligrams.
So if you or your children drink this, please don't, especially if you are suffering from poor sleep or mood issues.
And the way that Celsius gets around like the caffeine limit and FDA approval, which it doesn't have, is because it brands itself as a workout supplement. And it seems like consumers these days are really susceptible to like health conscious branding, and perhaps no soda is doing it better than Poppi with its like colorful packaging and fun flavors, and trademarking itself as a gut-healthy soda for all of the prebiotics that are in it. It's actually the top seller in the soda soft drinks category on Amazon. And people kind of look at them as like a masterclass in marketing because of the way that they've used influencers and celebrity sponsorships. Like we all remember Alex Earl going to Coachella last year with them, or their partnership with the Lakers, or Billie Eilish saying it's a staple in her dressing room before concerts. They even had the most watched ad of last year's Super Bowl, which was seen by 30 million households.
This will be the last moment you ever think of soda as being a dirty word. Poppi is the next chapter in the story of soda. The future of soda is now, and it's called Poppi.
We're staying with Poppi. So up here we have our big Poppi spread. We have Coachella, and this is our Poppi style living room.
Poppi is getting called out big time for shipping these insane vending machines to a bunch of influencers.
I literally love Poppi so much. This is actually insane.
Ah yes, viral vending machine Poppygate. So a quick refresher on the internet drama if you missed it. So ahead of the Super Bowl, Poppi sent like fully sized, full stocked vending machines filled with Poppi to dozens of influencers who then obviously like flaunted it on social media, and haters in the comments were pissed. They were saying the gift was so out of touch, like so wasteful. Quote, I bet hospital workers or school teachers would have loved that. Then Poppi's biggest competitor, Olipop, entered the chat and started leaving comments like, for the record, those machines cost $25K each, LOL, or 32 machines times $25K, yikes. So there's clearly some major beef between these brands. But Poppi made a statement saying that the vending machines cost less than half of that, and that they were just temporary gifts to creators hosting Super Bowl parties and would be reused in the future. And that was unfortunately not the only scandal that Poppi was caught up in. So the brand was actually hit with a class action lawsuit last year saying that the soda doesn't live up to its promise of being gut healthy. And nutritional scientists actually agree, saying that a can doesn't have enough prebiotics in it, and that you'd actually have to drink 4 cans of Poppi every day for at least 3 weeks to get any kind of benefit from it. But at that point, you would have consumed so much sugar that it would cancel out any positive.
So what makes it worse is that the prebiotic fiber is actually really hard to digest. So if you have a strong stomach and you can tolerate it, it can be beneficial because it feeds the good bacteria in your gut. But if you have stomach issues or a sensitive stomach, which relatable, then it can wreak havoc on your digestive system. There's lots of videos on social media of people complaining of painful gas or bloating after drinking Poppi or any prebiotic soda, actually especially Olipop because it has a ton of prebiotic fiber. And doctors have reported literally telling their patients to stop drinking it.
So Poppi settled the lawsuit for $8.9 million just a few weeks ago and actually stopped writing gut healthy on its cans. And that same week that they settled, they were actually acquired by PepsiCo for nearly $2 billion. And this just kind of shows how big soda is entering this better for you soda space in order to stay relevant in the industry.
And it's interesting, Pepsi made this acquisition a month after Coca-Cola announced it's launching a prebiotic soda of its own called Simply Pop.
Ah yes, the bitter cola wars of the 1970s continue.
So Coke's is part of the Simply line, we all know, Simply Juice and stuff. But interestingly, Simply Pop does have 10 grams of sugar, which is double what Poppi has, but is nowhere near the 40 grams of sugar in a normal Coke.
And people are really tracking this. A 2024 survey of 18 to 34-year-olds associated terms like unhealthy, sugary, and diet with Coca-Cola, as opposed to Poppi, which they associated with probiotics, organic, nutritious, and beneficial.
And their association isn't unfounded because a recent study found that sugary drinks like soda and energy drinks contribute to 330,000 deaths and 3 million new cases of diabetes and heart disease a year.
So it's really no wonder that US sales of Coca-Cola slid 14% in the past decade. But honestly, at the end of the day, in the food and beverage industry, marketing is everything. And big soda is really struggling to kind of find its place with Gen Z. Coca-Cola started to kind of come out with new flavors to entice young consumers. They introduced Spiced last February, which was their first new flavor in 3 years, and it was such a flop that they phased it out in a couple months.
Yeah, they claimed it had the classic taste of Coca-Cola with refreshing bursts of raspberry and a curated blend of warm spiced flavors. But younger customers said it tasted nothing like spice and that the name and branding made no sense.
Pepsi sales have also plummeted recently, 32% in the past decade. It introduced a new logo last year and has really been trying to rebrand, but ultimately it was behind on ad spending in comparison to Coca-Cola and these other sodas. So it decided to shift strategies and basically market Pepsi as the soda that tastes better with food.
Well, according to the CEO, there's scientific evidence that because of the unique mix of spices, the level of carbonation, and the sweetness of a bottle of Pepsi, it actually goes well with most foods. That's really convenient.
Pasta deserves Pepsi.
Every bite better with Pepsi.
Literally such a random claim, but apparently it's working. So Pepsi is boosting its social ad campaign. That ad that we saw has millions of views, and sales in retail stores since the rollout has doubled.
Well, the cola wars are at it again because Coke actually ran the same campaign, and now 20% of Italians say they drink Coke with their pizza, which is up from just 10% 4 years ago.
Something else we came across in our research that we didn't expect to obliterate soda sales is the war in Israel and Gaza. So both Coca-Cola and Pepsi are facing huge boycotts in the Middle East and South Asia because they're seen as brands that are symbols of America and by extension Israel.
Both companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars over decades building demand in Muslim majority countries, so these boycotts really have an impact, not only in what's being described as cratered sales, but also in their reputation. So one couple that refused to serve Coke and Pepsi at their wedding said they didn't want their money lining the tax coffers of the United States, Israel's staunchest ally.
And it'll be interesting to see if there's a bounce back in these sales at some point, but this conflict has no end in sight, so there's new soda brands that are kind of popping up all over the place, like Cola Gaza and Palestine drinks, which has sold 16 million cans in the last 5 months. And it's kind of just like activism you can drink. It's basically selling this brand to raise awareness of the issue.
It's funny how on the nose those names are. Well, when Bangladesh's Coke sales dropped 23%, the franchise tried to do damage control by running an ad that said, "Even Palestine has a Coke factory." But then they were forced to delete it everywhere when it came to light that that factory is actually owned and operated by Israel.
Yeah, that's rough for a company like Coca-Cola that's literally known for its very neutral marketing policy on socio-political issues. But honestly, there's so much drama and like mixed messaging when it comes to soda. Might just be better to stick to water.
This past weekend, Coachella kicked off music festival season with huge names like Lady Gaga. We all saw the epic clips. Charlie XCX, Green Day, Travis Scott, and Post Malone.
And even though weekend one is known as like the star-studded weekend when all the celebrities and influencers go, we were all, of course, bombarded with cool like desert Coachella pictures all weekend. This festival was kind of a chaotic mess from the moment it started.
Coachella, what the hell are you doing? We have been stuck in line for nearly 10 hours. It's 100 degrees outside. People's cars are overheating. They're running out of gas. And another woman literally got hit by a car because she was trying to block them from cutting in front of her.
We can't drink water. We can't go pee. They won't let us into any of the restrooms. No bathrooms except for the staff, and the staff won't let us in. Apparently people ahead of us were shitting in the bushes.
Chaos at Coachella as the journey to the iconic music festival's campgrounds turned into a parking lot.
We still haven't heard from organizers, so we don't know what went wrong and if they're going to fix it or not.
And even though 125,000 people went last weekend, and it's the most famous North American music festival of all, this year's ticket sales were sluggish, and last year didn't even sell out, which was the first time in its 25-year history.
And Coachella isn't alone. Other huge festivals like Burning Man didn't sell out last year, and 50 entire festivals were canceled across the US. NPR actually called 2024 the year the music festival industry died.
And of the ones that did happen, ticket sales were down 15%, and there's so many reasons for this decline. Like, one thing is, of course, the inflation prices. Organizers say their costs have doubled just in the past few years. So renting toilets for a festival in 2021 cost only $36,000. Now it's $71,000. So obviously those costs have to be passed on to the consumers in the ticket prices. So last year, Glastonbury tickets, for example, cost 43% more than pre-pandemic prices.
And then there's a huge shift in the culture in the past few years that have made music festivals less popular, like Gen Z social trends, streaming culture, even the rise of super fans. Like, people are so willing to fly across the world and like give up their firstborns to see Beyonce or Taylor Swift in concert, and then they're not saving up enough to go to these music festivals.
I would do that for Taylor Swift. So as festival season gets underway, and we'll soon have Lollapalooza and Stagecoach and Bonnaroo and Summerfest, which is actually the biggest music festival in North America, we spoke to Glenn McDonald, who is a data alchemist at Spotify for 10 years and authored the book You Have Not Yet Heard Your Favorite Song, about how the landscape of music is changing. What big shifts in music consumption have you witnessed as we've entered this digital era?
I think personalization is the most obvious change, but the background change behind all of that is just that all the world's music is available, but not yet accessible to most people. Like, you can get to anything in 2 clicks, but you have to know which clicks they are. So we've made a lot of progress in what's possible, but not as much progress in what most people actually experience. If you're willing to do a lot of work, you can get a lot farther in the world of music than you could when, say, I was 16 and I had to ride my bike to the record store and like pick up these pieces of cardboard and wonder what was inside of them.
So bringing that to kind of our story, which is about music festivals, with that lens, they're kind of more important than ever because they're obviously like a curated lineup of bands and music. So how do you think streaming platforms have affected people wanting to experience music in that kind of way?
I mean, there's a bunch of dynamics at work at once. The most promising one for live music is we've sort of commodified recorded music in a way that makes live music sort of much more special. When I was a kid, my money could go to records or concerts, and a concert was like 2 or 3 records, and the records I would have forever. So that was a pretty hard decision to make. Now, basically, the music it's not free, but I'm gonna pay $10 a month. So once I've paid that, like, there's no incremental cost.
The last time we talked about concerts on the show, we were talking about Taylor Swift's Eras tour. She was breaking every record, selling out in 2 minutes. There was people clearly so motivated to spend
as much as needed to go see her. And we were wondering if streaming culture has really fueled super fans, because you can kind of live in this echo chamber that kind of like deeper entrenches you into this fandom culture.
There are a few artists who are big enough to have a community just to themselves. If that's possible for you as an artist, then that's amazing, because it's a whole lot easier to marshal a community around one artist than it is around a bunch of artists. Streaming provides all the ways for that audience to focus. We should make it possible for artists who aren't Taylor Swift and who do have to go away for 3 years to make an album and then come back and try to tour and have to be like, where are my fans? Have they forgotten about me? One of streaming's functions ought to be sustain those communities.
Yeah, we had read somewhere that algorithms when it comes to streaming have kind of confused people when they're going to see music festivals. Like the lineups can confuse people because everyone's kind of just used to their music coming up. Do you agree with that statement? What do you think about how our expectations of music have changed because we have access to this?
An algorithmically mediated experience changes what you think the world consists of.
Yeah.
Even though you're sort of aware that these are things being fed to me and not everybody, still you're seeing and hearing what you're seeing and hearing. And so a band that you didn't pick that just keeps showing up on your Discover Weekly or Release Radar week after week, it's natural to sort of assume, everybody must be getting this band all the time, so everybody must be aware of them. You can still, I think, do large festivals as long as you have some anchor in what, is that a community? Are you addressing a community? Does that community have a set of things that they like, or are you just pulling a bunch of random people into a field and playing them random music?
Do you think we're going to see more niche festivals be more successful versus the broad ones that bring in a ton of eclectic genres? Is that what your prediction would be?
That would make sense. I think there's a bunch of other dynamics going on, COVID and the economy and the explosion of festivals. And a festival could succeed for other reasons. The experience is really good. It's easy to get to. The food is there's a bunch of things that would cause people to have a really good experience at a festival and want to come back, even if the lineup is not perfectly tailored to them. But in general, I think if I were trying to mount festivals, I would be trying to mount very focused festivals.
And does having access at your fingertips at all time to music, do you think de-incentivize people to want to go find live music? Or let's take Coachella, obviously just happened last weekend, and we could sit at home and watch Gaga's performance. We didn't have to go there.
I think it helps people focus that the thing about the live experience is that you're experiencing with other people. It's not just seeing the stage show. Now you can hear those songs, however, but you don't get to hear them with other people, and you can share that experience because you all have the joy of discovery at once.
Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we're taking a look at the black market of restaurant reservations. Bye.